we've done a study on all of our applications, which is internal data, and it's like if you do not pet friendly, you get access to it's like 62% of the market, and if you're doing pet friendly, one pet up to 35 pounds, it's like 91% of the market.
Yeah.
So it's basically 50% more people that you have access to.
Absolutely.
So you're just going to get a lot more people interested. So it's going to get higher quality tenant, possibly more rent, and you get a bigger deposit.
Yeah. And I find they stay longer because it's harder to find a place. Hello, welcome to Bamboo, Vancouver's property management and investment podcast. This week I have Keaton Bessy. He's another property manager. Lo and behold, property managers actually work together. It's amazing. So welcome, Keaton.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Haze.
Yeah. So what did you do before property management? Like, how'd you end up here?
Yeah, so property management's been in my family for a long time.
Okay.
My grandparents owned a bunch of land and storage facilities and apartment buildings in northern Alberta.
Yeah.
So property management was a thing in my life before I was even a concept. So in my world, my dad had 7 siblings, and but he was like the most involved in the company. So he was helping with the development, the construction, managing the storage facilities, the farm land, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so we ended up actually moving out here because when my grandparents passed away, they did horrible estate planning, left, I think the whole estate was like $13 million in the early 90s. So like big money, and it just vaporized through legal, and none of the kids got anything. Like, I don't care, just work hard and make your own living, right? But so that's why we moved out here, because I just wanted to get away from it. So my dad worked in it for a long time, but I got into restaurants first. So it's like 15 years in restaurants, and McDonald's, packing stuff in freezer warehouses and stuff, and then Joey Restaurant Group.
Yeah.
And then the restaurant industry, like a lot of people, kind of burned me out and wanted something different. Talking to my dad, he's like, come try property management. Nice. So that's how I got into that.
Seems like a lot of people come through the restaurant bar scene. Myself included, is we all end up here, man.
Yeah.
So the topic that we wanted to talk about this podcast is mostly focused on one of the most contested parts of property management, which would be the move in, move out. I'd say most of the time that you end up at the RTB is over this.
Yeah.
So I figured we'll put our 2 brains together, hopefully build one full brain and kind of go through it. So we'll do it from a very low level and then go all the way up. So for instance, what is the purpose of the move-in report, and how does it protect both the tenant and the landlord? Kind of takes with that.
Yeah. So the move-in, you can download a template that the provincial government likes off the website, right? Which
absolutely.
You people might not know. And so that kind of lays out what the RTB wants to see at the end of the day anyways. That's what I'm most familiar with. That's what I understand.
Yeah.
There are other reports that look modified. They may miss something on purpose or not on purpose.
Yeah.
And so for anybody listening, if you're just running one unit yourself or something, just use the main report on the website. And the main thing is that there is a record and a signed agreement of the condition of the property once it's passed off.
Of course.
If there are things that are damaged, the landlord should fix those regardless.
Yeah.
But we're just taking an accurate representation of the home once the possession is passed from the landlord to the tenant.
Yeah, just like a screen capture, if you will, of what the place looks like and what was there, so you can compare it afterwards, of course, right?
Yeah, it's a screenshot in time. Whether it was last year or a decade ago, you have this record.
Yeah.
And if you lose it, you're screwed.
So now, what specific details should be included in the move-in inspection report? Like anything in particular that people miss, or surefire should be in there?
Yeah. So again, we literally use the BC form.
Yeah.
We've just templated e-signature stuff over top of it to make it really easy for us to do, right?
Of course.
And the components in that sheet are fill it all out unless the areas don't exist in the home, right? So it's built out to be a 2-bedroom, 1-bath detached house, with the yard is what the sheet is actually made for. Yeah. But it applies to 4-bedroom condo. You can add notes and all that kind of stuff, right? As you know. So some people will miss like trying to turn on the gas fireplace, for example, and then tenant might submit a maintenance request, oh, it doesn't work, and then you get in there and realize, oh, the previous tenant took the plate off and smashed this thing, and I didn't check. Right? So you're checking there, like I've lifted off the toilet tank of move in and move out during move outs, and people are wondering, why the hell are you doing that? Like, you're crazy. And I was like, I've been doing this a long enough time that this is something that we do.
Yeah.
Check the breaker box, make sure all the breakers are not only on or what position they should be in, but that they exist and they've been ripped out of there.
Yeah.
Or, people have taken old fuses and pumped them into the stoves and stuff. So they seal them out of the breaker boxes and they put them into or I think it's backwards. I'm not an electrician, but they pull them out of the stove and they put them into their breaker box so that it works or something. So there's all sorts of stuff that, we would see from the years that we've been doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just want to check everything on that list, right? So.
Oh yeah, it's funny you mentioned actually about the breaker box, because I had a tenant who we went through, did out all the inspection, all that. And they called me up and tell me, this light switches aren't working, blah blah blah. And so we went through everything else. That turned out it was just a breaker.
Yeah,
so we turned it off.
Pretty common.
That's a pretty easy fix. Good thing we didn't call the electrician on that and spend a bunch of money, right?
Exactly.
So. Yeah, there's some certain things. One of the things as well that's interesting with the move-in report is checking the light switches, the sockets. Mm-hmm. Because some of the ones that are connected to the light switch, only the bottom one works. Mm-hmm. And that I've run into a couple of times. They're like, oh, it's not working. And like, plug your lamp in the other one.
Yeah, I see some developers that are like, they put little stickers on the proper one. It's like, that's supposed to be the one. A sticker could be incorrectly placed, right? But yeah, we actually don't go around and check sockets.
Yeah.
If there's not anything like visible. Like, you're not a home inspector, right?
Yeah.
So we won't do that if a tenant, submits a maintenance request is not working, fair enough.
Yeah.
But if somebody's gone in, pulled out the whole plug, snipped the wire behind it, put it back in, hasn't done anything else on the property, it's like, okay, well, what are you like? We're looking at ridiculous stuff.
Right? With that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So now with that, you're mentioning that you download that off of the website from the government.
Mm-hmm.
Do photos and videos work with that as well? Like, are you taking photos and keeping this all as one together, or how do you keep all your proof together, basically? Because, hole in wall may not be enough.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, the practice that we've found really useful is that whenever you the default on the form for us is all good. So there's
nothing to report.
I think it's objective checkboxes. Like you're looking at it and saying, okay, this is fair, poor, missing, stained, damaged. They're all very vague terms, but you just want to get people to agree on it. If we go in there and have to change something from good to damaged drywall, for example, there might be a hole in the drywall in the back of a closet or something, reasonable stuff, but it still needs to be paid for or fixed. You'll add the note, hole in drywall, D for damaged, and then we'll take a photo of it and we'll attach that photo to our e-signing platform. But for an individual landlord, it's take all these photos. You can airdrop them to the tenant while you're there, or email them over, say here's the inspection report, the photos of it, and here's all the photos we took.
Yeah.
There you go. Good. We also allow tenants to, the tenants will leave and sign the move-in later.
Okay.
So we let them sign it later, just to give them the time to settle in.
Yeah.
But if they bring a bunch of ridiculous crap, we're going to be I don't know, you didn't sign it very quickly. or I don't know, we were there. And they also have a spot where they can upload some things. And that's honestly worked really, really well, because we'll have tenants go and they'll add one thing. It's oh yeah, no, I remember from seeing that at showings or whatever. Actually, they didn't great. I'm glad you caught it, right?
Yeah, okay. Because everyone makes a mistake, right? We're all human.
Yeah, exactly. That's fine. Yeah.
So now for the do-it-yourself, because we do have a lot of our listeners are do-it-yourself landlords, what would you recommend as a good place to store, good practice? People don't burn CD-ROMs anymore. I just aged myself, dude. But keeping it in the cloud or a Dropbox, I guess, would be your best, a third party. Or?
Yeah, I mean, that's another reason as to why you want to email it to the tenant as well. So sitting in your outbox, maybe send it to the tenant and yourself. So sitting in their outbox or inbox, your inbox. If you're in dispute, they might not send it to you, but they'd also have to submit it as evidence, so they would have presented it to you. And then, if you have a Dropbox or something separate from your own, hard drive, then you have it in 3 different places, and you're all good.
Yeah,
right.
Sure. So now you had mentioned if you're doing the inspection, you find something like a hole punch in the back of the closet or that. how do you deal with pre-existing stuff when you're doing your inspection? And that, what's the timeline, or how do you handle this? What's the best practices? Again, as a professional and for the do-it-yourselfer.
Yeah. So most of the stuff when we're onboarding a new client, we are kind of going through that repair process as we're showing the properties. Like, we won't show properties on show ready.
Of course.
Right? But they might be, okay, one of the burners on the stove doesn't work. We're not going to not show a property because of that. But it's like, we got the quote, it's getting fixed, the parts on order, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Some things are visible, some things are not, but you just add these things on with the photo, like we just talked about, right? The tough part is on the move out.
Yeah.
Right? Just when you're like, what are we doing here? What are we charging back? But this is the whole point of the move in, is to make sure that those items are noted. So then on the move out, it's really anything that's different.
Yeah, anything that's extra there. And we're definitely going to go into a whole gang of the move out stuff.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, with the move in, you've got that all done. They've all signed off on that. What do you figure is a reasonable timeline to get, say, that hole in the wall fixed? Like, does it happen in a couple of days? Is a week reasonable? What's the usual turnaround time? I mean, obviously, get it done as fast as possible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it also depends on the tenancy and where it is, right? So if we're talking about a hole in the wall, it's the size of really small. Timeline might be never. Like, it's in a closet.
Yeah.
Like, why are we fixing this? For what reason? It doesn't improve the property for any. It's just a cosmetic issue, right?
Yeah.
If there's a hole in the wall, the size of your head in the middle of the living room, it's like, okay, well, first of all, they shouldn't have rented it.
Yeah, it's not
so like they rented it with that. Well, it's more of like mitigating a pest issue potentially. Like pests can get in the walls and they can't mount their TV or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we're doing repairs at a move-in, usually stuff gets done within a week or two.
Okay.
But we'll be waiting for owner approval, quotes and things. If it's something that shows up at a move-in that we haven't already seen, or like a landlord doesn't already know, which happens. We're not perfect, but okay, we've seen that like a stove burner. Oh wow, like that doesn't fire up. It fired up last time we were here.
Yeah.
Classic. So we put that through our maintenance request process. If we have somebody on site, like we're troubleshooting it while we're there, so we can skip that whole process.
Yeah.
Right to the gas fitter, right to the appliance tech or whatever. They get us an estimate, goes to the owner hums and haws around replacing it or ordering the part or replacing the whole system.
The whole system, right? Yeah.
And then, depending on delivery times and stuff, we have no idea. But it could be super quick. Could be appliance tech comes out, they do an adjustment, a cleaning or something, and then it fires right back up. Yeah. And then you're all good. And that could be as early as the next day.
Yeah.
Sometimes the tenants don't move in right away either. So it's like we have the vendors that here's the work order.
Yeah, just a quick.
You call the tenant and coordinate yourself.
Yeah.
And then we just check in with the tenant to make sure that it's been resolved. Or tenants are usually pretty good. They're like, hey, I haven't heard from your trade yet. So then we'll follow up as well and make sure it's getting done quickly. Right?
Yeah. So all trades, by the way, take note. Please contact the tenant when you've been contacted, because we end up getting yelled at.
Yeah. And any trades listening to this thing, I don't want to contact the tenant. It's your tenant. You contact them. You are not going to get any business because there's no point in being the middleman between us. Like, it doesn't work. You'll just get another vendor.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really easy to just call them yourself and go.
Yeah. Plus, you can stack them up accordingly. Like sometimes we need 3 things done in the same building, so why not just hit them all done in one shot and call it a day, right?
Yeah,
you'll get the extra business if you're trading. So now you did speak about dealing with the tenant and contacting and all that. How do you ensure that the tenants are involved in the move-in report? Like, they're obviously showing up. Mm-hmm. Do you take them with you? Do you go do the report yourself and come back to them? What's a good practice, best process for that?
Yeah. So to cut that, it's very funny. We do this with like keys as well. So if I find that if the tenant walks around with you and you as a landlord or agent are like leading the way, and you go through the list kind of in order as best you can.
Yeah.
That way you're kind of walking them through something and they were there.
Yeah.
So it's like, you were standing here, we looked at it all, it was okay, right? So we do that, get the photos and stuff. They will point to things, right? Like we have some wall damage on this wall here, computer chair, right? And they'll point to that, and it's like, well, if that was in an apartment, yes, we're marking that down. Yeah. But there's certain things that are like imperfections, right? So they're going to say, oh, well, what about this? It's like, well, we could take photos of stuff all day in here. This is not an issue. And if at move out next year, 10 years from now, if there's a dispute with us and the landlord or whatever, The landlord has to pay $100 filing fee, put together all his paperwork to try to argue to the RTB that this is causing them a financial issue.
Yeah, right.
And then it comes up where it's like, oh, you haven't painted the place for 10 years, and so it's time to paint. Like, no reward, right?
Absolutely.
So they'll lose that. But yeah, walking them through, so they were there. And then we actually walk them through the sheet together with all the photos attached, their insurance, their utilities, it's all in the same document. And then we're like, good, yeah. And then we send it to them, and they still have the opportunity to go look at it, add a couple things, ask questions of later, but we just make sure they got the email. So, and you can do the same thing, take a photo of it, send an email with photos. And
you got to be more collaborative.
Got the email.
And that's the thing that I think, you and I are both in a bunch of these various landlord groups, and I would say that a good 75-80% is clearly from just lack of communication. Like, just be transparent and talk to each other, because a lot of times you hear these horror stories coming out, and it's just like, what happened right before that? Like, I'm pretty sure no one came out of the gates raging. So, did you ignore them for a week?
Yeah.
Did you ignore them for a month?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, like if my stove didn't work for a month and you ignored me, I would be pissed off too.
Yeah, like I took
Absolutely.
like we own our condo now, but the condo we moved out of 7 years ago that we were renting, I took our landlord and agent to the RTB.
Yeah, isn't that how
for a down deposit? For the down deposit. And when I called them to issue the monetary order against them, like the RTB gave us the order for double the deposit because they didn't send the whole thing back. I issued the order to the office, like, oh, that property manager doesn't work here anymore. I was like, I don't care. It's being issued against you guys and the owner, so pay it. Like, oh my God, I don't want the owner to pay this. Like, they're not going to pay it. You're going to pay it. And I told her on the phone, I was like, we don't even want this money. We don't need the money. We're doing it because your agent was such an ass during this inspection. And then after we agreed to the amount, he sent us less the amount.
Yeah.
Fine. And he also knew what I did for a living. So don't do this, right? Yeah. So am I a bad tenant? I don't know. But that's a perfect example of like crappy communication, assuming someone's trying to rip you off, assuming somebody's lying to you.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah, and it does goes both ways. I mean, with the tenants as well. Like, don't assume that the evil landlord is out to get you all the time. Some of them, on both sides of the coin, there's always dickheads on both sides.
Yeah.
That's a given. That's with anything.
Yeah.
Right? But I think that, communication and just maybe assume for the best first.
Yeah, assume the positive. I say that all the time.
But they're not trying to, people are generally not trying to get each other.
Yeah.
They maybe just have a different stance, but I'm sure that if you purvey that, you'll probably get to be into a better place.
Yes.
On that. You also touched a bit on the painting from the RTB. Now, the RTB does have some times, for instance, flooring and paint. I mean, paint is generally 5 years for the RTB. Or we actually treat it as well as tenants, because moving, people banging this shit all the time. Right? And then flooring is around 10 years, which is another thing to take into account, because we've seen situations where the floors are absolutely fine, but they're the developer's floors. And they use the cheapest knockoff carpet they can find, kind of thing. And eventually they just go. And I think that's something that a lot of landlords need to take into account for the move in and move outs, that like sometimes your carpets are just done. You know, like you'll see some of the ones that have that black spot that goes along the high traffic area. And it's like, that's just the carpet deteriorating. It's not it's not
if you for some reason are too cheap to replace the carpet and you're going to re-rent it anyways, fine. You're literally getting free carpet at this point. Like, it's free repair and maintenance, but you're not going to win the battle at the RTB to charge it against the tenant.
Exactly.
Right? It's too old. The component is gone. And they do have there is an RTB guideline. It just said it was like 27A or so. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't me on that. I don't remember what it is. But it's, you literally just Google like moving out BC, and it's the government website, and you scroll down slightly and go to the guideline. Yeah. And it lays all that stuff out. So if you're questioning a component during a move-in, like a move-out or something, you can just look at that up, Control F to the component, floor, walls, or whatever. Yeah. Just read it, and then you'll know, oh, okay, like I can't charge a tenant back for that, or I can.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of like ties in as well with the move-in reports, is that I noticed that a lot of do-it-yourselfers in particular, simply imagine because of time. I mean, real estate's expensive in Vancouver and Greater Vancouver, so most people have a job if you have a rental place. And they don't do their check-ins throughout the tenancy. Mm-hmm. And I think
that's periodic inspections.
Yeah, throughout the tenancy. And I think that's where a lot of the problems come from as well. Because, you know, like, you can catch problems, example pets, well ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Like on those landlord sites that I mentioned earlier, you always hear these horror stories about, oh, this pet, and there's piss everywhere, and he's done this and all that stuff. Like, that didn't happen the day before.
Yeah.
Had you checked in on your tenant at some point in time, you probably would have noticed something's a little off here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the question, I guess, that I'm long-term getting to there is, how often should you check? And that. Like, how often throughout a tenancy do you think is a reasonable time? I know by the RTB you're allowed to go every month, but I think any tenant would throw a brick at you if you
did that. I would throw a brick at myself if I do that. So we do inspections twice a year.
Okay.
We do our first inspection after 3 months of a new tenancy, and then every 6 months after that. Yeah. People are going to find that a lot of people don't even know this, and they might be on this insurance policy and haven't checked.
Yeah.
But a lot of people might have like quarterly inspection requirements when they're only hiring a financial company for twice a year.
Yeah.
So check that. The quarterly is also too much. So the reason why insurance companies do quarterly instead of biannually, there's no way in hell they have any data saying that tenancies are better if they're quarterly, because if they were, we would all be doing it quarterly.
Yeah.
The reason insurance companies do it is because if they have a claim that could be due to the tenant, and you haven't done your quarterly inspections, kept the reports, then they'll try to back out of the claim, which is way more intelligent on their side than screwing you as the homeowner.
It's almost like insurance companies try to get out of paying the insurance.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah. Super strange. Absolutely nuts. Follow us for more tips.
Also, I love the landlord groups when they bring up, I just moved out my tenant and the place is destroyed and blah, 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 blah. And their story you can just see, and I just respond, screen better, do 2 inspections per year. And then everybody just loses their mind because like, oh, you don't know the scenario, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I've been swinging the stick long enough that I know exactly what's going on here. I just don't know which part. But I know those 2 comments that I just made is correct.
Yeah. So for determining what is normal wear and tear versus tenant caused, because this is the big one where everybody ends up at the RTB. How do you determine what's your cause? Like, in most cases for a lot of my properties, I kind of determine, one, could I do it, or how did you do it? Do you know what I mean? Like a scuff on the wall, because Blue Jeans mark walls really well. Sure. But like a hole in the ceiling, I'm like, how the hell did you do that? Right?
Yeah.
Then no, like, so what is a reasonable sort of, I mean, obviously it's a gray area. What is a reasonable gauge for figuring out what is something to deduct from reasonably or not?
So there is the guideline, which we already talked about, right? So if, you got a big gouge in the middle of the floor in the living room, it's really obvious. It's like, okay, well, we need to replace these floors, but then you just look at the capital depreciation schedule, if you will, and you do that, go ahead. Tenant might get pissed off about that anyways, but that's how it works. What we found is that and this is like gold for anybody out there, is that when you are doing the move-out inspection, you just show to the tenant, this is the information that I've got. This is the damage that I found that is different from the move-in.
Yeah.
This is not the final thing. I don't have the final say. We have to agree on this, or the RTB has to tell us.
Of course. Right?
So this is what I've found here. And this is where you can agree with the report and the holdback, or this is where you can disagree.
Yeah.
And disagreement does not mean you disagree 100%.
Yeah.
You could disagree on one item. Like, no, that light fixture was broken when I moved in.
Yeah.
And you just don't remember or whatever. It's okay, fine.
Yeah.
Write that down. Yeah. And so all they have to do is, check the box and write down their disagreement. We don't have to disagree by yelling at each other.
Yeah, of course.
Right. Haze, I don't like you, and I think you're a liar. That's not a good way to have a move-out inspection, but that's what people do.
Yeah.
So just have them complete the form, and then they can sign off on it, give the forwarding address,
Yeah.
and then your time, 15 days starts. So getting to the point of like what's reasonable wear and tear, I found that question doesn't actually really matter that much, because if you go through the process reasonably, they will just agree on something.
Yeah.
And if they don't, and if you feel it's unreasonable, and you feel like whatever you put on there is you're going to win at the RTB, then you choose.
Yeah.
Go to the RTB or just write this off.
Exactly. And that's sort of one of those things with a lot of landlords, owners, that they need to decide to pick their battles. For instance, we're talking about the paint or the flooring for that matter, that, you know, if it's your fourth, fifth tenant there, it's been 6 years since you painted and there's some extra scuffing on the wall, you're probably repainting it anyways. Is going to battle over this worth it? Not really, because you're battling over something that's going to get repainted anyways. Same with the thing that on the flooring, I find I've seen some landlords want to collect for a tenant not cleaning a carpet when the landlord's going to rip up the carpet anyways. And it's like, do we want clean trash? Like, pick your battles. Is this worth that?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And I think that's one of the things that with that gray area on the move in, move out, it's...
Well, like we just had clients who sold, like, had tenants for 4 years. They, like, the owners moved to the East Coast for work, and they weren't sure if they were going to move back or not.
Yeah.
So they kept it, rented it out. And then 4 years later, they're like, hey, like, we're going to stay in the East Coast. So we want to sell this now.
Yeah.
They sold it. They had a great realtor. The tenants were great. Everything went fine. The sale went great. Everything was fine.
Yeah.
The tenants actually ended up moving out early. They moved the sale up. Like, everything has worked wonderfully, which is how it normally works if you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was that we went through the move out, and the tenants did do, like, they put up like the string lights to the corners for the kids or whatever. Right? And so at the move out, I said, oh, the string lights have to go. And they went out and pulled them all off the wall and ripped all the paint off on this line. And like the closing was like that day.
Yeah.
And so like, okay, well that sucks. But I mean, whatever, we have the deposit, right?
Yeah.
And so we went back to the owners and the realtor and just said, hey, like, we sent the inspection report to the tenants, gave them the holdbacks. And the tenants just said, yeah, fine. And they just agreed to everything.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's good. That'll help solve any problems with the buyer. The buyer buys it. The place is painted it's a nice color, but it's not for everybody, right? And so they were painting anyways.
Yep.
So who cares? So the buyer bought the place. They moved in. They're happy. So they're fine. Okay. So now we have this like $1,000 of holdback that we're sending to the owners, and they're like, "Why? What's for this? What's this for?" And so we're like, "Well, I mean, you can send it back to the tenants if you want. They're really nice. Like, yeah, we don't need that money.
Yeah.
Right." And so it's like, great.
Yeah. Just be a
That's
good
how
person.
you should just think. Like, for what?
Exactly right. Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, I guess it comes back to picking your battles. Now, you did talk about the holdback. Obviously, for such a thing, for instance, they're not going to repaint the whole apartment because of that bit of paint. How do you gauge to make a fair assessment? You know, for instance, cleaning is one of the ones that come up all the time as well, because one person's cleaning is not another. I mean, we've all been a 21-year-old guys where my cleaning is a lot better than it is now. I'm 44, right? So, like, for small touch-ups, for instance, you know, they missed a couple spots on the cleaning. How do you make a fair assessment on how much, if any, from the damage deposit should come out? Because obviously you don't need a full $500 cleaning job for somebody who missed the stove.
Yeah.
So how do you make your assessment on how much should come off? Because obviously something needs to come, because you have to send somebody at some point in time. So how do you gauge that?
Yeah, so again, it is just more about like negotiating. So if we have, you know, somebody who's moving out, the unit is like pretty clean otherwise, and they've just like missed the stove or something. Okay, well, it costs $150 to call it a cleaning company to clean that stove.
Yeah.
And they're usually like, yep, crap, I forgot, done.
Yeah.
Right, we're all good. If it's like they cleaned it themselves, which is the more common one, not the stove, but just like, you know, a bunch of the corners just like not, and like somebody moving it. And it's funny, the people who clean it themselves and don't do a great job are the same people who freak out when it's not exactly perfectly clean when they move in.
Absolutely.
Which is hilarious. But anyways, so people will move out, they won't do the greatest job. We'll say, okay, well, like, this is going to be maybe $200-$300 for a cleaning company to come back with two people for a couple hours to like just detail it all up to have it done, and then they argue about it. So there's two things. One, in our lease, we say it has to be cleaned to a professional standard and submit a receipt.
Yes.
If you have one, right?
Yeah,
or you clean it to professional standard. We should be able to tell the difference.
Yeah.
And we give them the checklist in their move out, and we give it to them at their lease time as well. Here it is. And they're like, yep, I agree, whatever. And then there is the RTB guideline, which again has like details of cleaning and what that means.
Yeah.
So if they're going to argue cleaning and that's the only thing on there, what we sometimes do is say, you know what amount do you agree on then?
Yeah.
And if they're just unreasonable, they're just going to be unreasonable. So go back to the owner and say, hey, you know what? This is what's actually happening. We want your tenants to move in properly. We're going to get it cleaned anyways. Whether the owner's paying for that or not is a whole different story. Yeah. It's like, do you want to go to the RTB over $350, or do you just want to wash it or whatever? Yeah. Right? Because that they're saying no, they're being unreasonable. We're done. And when it goes to the RTB, we've just had a couple. We don't have a lot of. We have like maybe one or two RTB claims at any given time, but we just had two that came through. Both had cleaning involved. And one, the arbitrator just basically tossed out our entire thing with no explanation. Like, so we have photos before, or we have move in and a move out. We have photos, and like the tenant was on the call, and they were saying how they were so busy moving with their kids that they didn't get to everything. They literally said it during the hearing, and they still got awarded their entire deposit back. And then we got another one where we're like, okay, like it was a little bit not sure, and the RTB awarded us everything, 100% what we asked for.
Yeah, it's strange.
Okay,
because they don't work on precedent, right?
Yeah, and they don't even look at the regulation sometimes. So it's like that's one of the problems. But yeah, we'll look at the regulation if it's a problem. That's how we advise the client at the end of the day. But in most cases, the tenants will just agree to something that's like relatively reasonable. Yeah. Again, if you're not dealing with a reasonable person, you're screwed anyways. One thing that we do is if something like maybe the floor needs something or whatever, and it has to be done like today. Yeah. We just tell the incoming tenants like, hey, this is the problem. We can give you money, and you guys can hire somebody to do it yourselves, or do you want us to try to coordinate this? The tenants are moving out today. Yeah. Right. And most people are like, yeah, thanks for letting us know. We'll just take the money. Good. And then we're talking to the tenants here, like that much money, and they're like, yep, fine, no problem. Yeah. Instead of hiring a professional company, right? And then everybody's happy. Right?
Yeah, for sure. It's the easiest way to solve things. Right?
Yeah. And people have told us, well, maybe you shouldn't have rented the place so soon. Maybe you should have more time in between. It's like, no, you wouldn't do that if it was your property either.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you talking about? And we just made a property available to you. Like this, it's here still. Like this isn't the end of the world. Come on.
Yes, one of the things also, as you mentioned time, I just wanted to go back to about doing inspections. You have to give a 24-hour notice, but it's not actually a 24-hour notice.
Correct. Correct.
So maybe explain to our listeners what we're talking about.
Yeah, so 24-hour notice for entry. That does not mean it does not mean, okay, I texted them yesterday evening and I get to go in tomorrow morning because it's the calendar has changed. So 24-hour notice requires multiple things. One, it requires a full 24-hour period. So just consider it an entire calendar day and don't include the day you send the notice. Yep. Right? If you're sending the notice, the delivery timelines are different. So if you are giving 24-hour notice, but you're going to the property, knocking on the door and hand delivering it to them, okay, that 24 hours. So if it's the 15th today and you want to go in on the 16th, well, you can't because you could technically because you go in the minute after you've hand delivered it to them. But I mean, if it's the 15th, give it to them 15th, go in on the 17th. Yeah, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? But a lot of people want to do. A lot of people don't have it's the RTB 51, getting the email service. So we have that in all of our leases, right?
Yeah, same here.
But it makes life easy.
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 3 days is better. Most people, you're going to be in a situation where you have to send registered mail, right? And so you got to go down and pay the $12 or whatever, send a registered mail, have the tracking number, and that is 5 days. So the day you send it on the 15th doesn't count. So you got 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 is 5 days. Now the 5-day period is done. The 21st is a 24-hour period. You can go in on the 22nd. Yeah. So it's a whole week
Exactly.
right? That is 24 hours.
Very deceiving.
What more interesting, we were talking about the selling tenanted property thing earlier.
Yeah.
One of the best things anybody can do, and if you're doing your do-it-yourself, but you're hiring a realtor to sell your tenanted property, tell them or you work out the schedule with the tenant, is to like give them an option with your realtor as to what days they actually want to be going in for open houses, appointments, and you open those up in advance, and you put that all on a calendar of like 4 weeks or 2 weeks or whatever. So you got Thursday nights between 4 and 7 and Saturdays between 10 and 1 or something. And these are the days you're going to be going in. You can send all those dates on the same notice. They just can't be more than 30 days in advance.
Yeah.
The limit as to how many can be on there has to just be reasonable. There is no number, just reasonable. Is it reasonable to show home twice a week if you're trying to sell the property? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So send it out in advance. Then the delivery period is all done. You don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
And if you don't have any buyers lined up for any tours, then just text message and cancel.
Yeah.
As early as you can because they're cooperating.
Yeah, that's the thing and we just discussed this actually in a meeting I was just at because, I do sales and property management. And the amount of times that a realtor will walk in like a bull in a china shop is nuts. And it's like, yo, somebody lives here. Like, I realize that it's tentative that, but like, you have to respect that that's someone's home, And that's the same. Build a schedule like what you just touched on. Will go eons there because it also lets a tenant feel that they have some premise of control. Because like having a place showtime ready 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's hard. I mean, we don't always put our dishes away.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they don't have to. If they don't like you, they don't have to do anything.
Absolutely don't have to. The other thing, too, with selling a tenanted property, we could actually do a whole show on this.
Yeah, easy.
Is it's a good idea to list it with a realtor who has both licenses or is managing your property simply for the fact that they already have photos. Because the tenant that is living there now used the photos that were there. Because a lot of tenants, they don't want you to walk in and take pictures of their stuff. I get it. It's a privacy thing. No problem. So the tenant does have the right to say, no photos. Now, how the hell are you going to sell a place that no one can see?
Yeah, if realtors are nice to us when they're selling our clients' properties, we will give them our photos.
Exactly, right? Fine. You go be nice.
Not a problem.
It's all things that you learn in like grade 4. Like if you're nice to people, they're nice to you. Is that weird?
Yeah.
Super strange.
Yeah.
So if there's a dispute with the tenant, what does that process look like? Like we have to file at the RTB $100 within 15 days of the keys being handed over and ending the tenancy. As a brief overview, what happens during that process? Because a lot of do-it-yourselfers, thankfully, haven't had to go through the process. But once they have to, it's a very daunting task. Like, oh my God, I'm going to arbitration. What now? So on a brief overview, how does that look after you spent your $100 and you're going to go to arbitration? Yeah,
so our advice when this comes up is that we tell the clients that unfortunately, the political landscape is skewed against them and they need to go in a Facebook group and complain to everybody.
Okay, good step one.
That is a joke, obviously. So once you've completed the move-out inspection, you've got the forwarding address and, the tenant signed off on the move-out inspection, you got the keys back, they're gone, it's all done. If there is no disagreement, the tenant agrees, maybe it's a couple $100 for cleaning or something.
Yeah.
Well, you have 15 days to send back the deposit that you collected originally, plus the interest on that deposit. So you go to the RTB website, find the interest calculator, and
which is actually pretty helpful, by the way. I have to admit, it's pretty helpful.
It's pretty good. The punch in all the information will tell you how much money you owe back. We had an interesting scenario a couple weeks ago when we were returning a deposit where the tenant got a pet during the tenancy. So they paid a pet deposit later on in the tenancy.
Oh, so it took the times off. Right?
Yeah, which actually makes the deposit cheap, like the less interest, to be honest, than if you just punch in the whole amount. But anyways, it's pennies.
Yeah, so we're talking like $11 here.
Yeah. So you want to return the deposit that they paid plus interest based on the calculator. And however they've asked you to do it, if they've given you a mailing address and you have checks, then, get them to send you an email and say, send it to my email address. So just email transfer them back the money. It's not a big issue. Then you're done. And we're all good. If there is a dispute, however, then you have 15 days from when they signed off and gave you the forwarding address to have a mutually negotiated amount.
Yep.
Or you return the whole amount, minus anything they've accepted.
Yeah.
Plus interest again, or you have to file with the RTV.
Yeah.
There's a couple things that people don't really think about in this. Is that one, for if you're negotiating an amount, don't do it over text message. Don't do it over the phone. Send an email at minimum and get it in writing. Okay, so you agree to this amount. Yes. Send the rest. Make sure you're applying interest. Then you're good. The option where you're not filing with the RTV, but if you're filing with the RTV, say you are disputing, say you have a $1,500 deposit and you're disputing $500.
Yep. You
can file with the RTV, which costs you $100. So you're looking for $600
total.
An award.
Yeah.
$1,500 deposit. You should still be sending them back the $900 plus interest.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You're just holding the amount of the dispute. A lot of people don't do that. They don't even think about it. And it will make you look better at the hearing as well. Because like I said, the arbitrators, depending on what they had for lunch, it's like all over the place. And you want to make sure that you look good in the eyes of the arbitrator.
Of course, because you don't want to look like you're frivolous or just trying to hold them hostage.
Yeah.
3 months down the road for your RTV hearing, for many tenants, that $1,500 is a big deal.
And this would be actually a question for a lawyer. I'm not too sure on this, but if you didn't send them back anything, the RTV might be like, well, no, you aren't awarded that. And you still need to send them back money. You've held back all this other stuff, so it might penalize you anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
Or double the remaining or whatever.
Yeah. And I have seen cases like that go that way. They've just decided that, you were trying to punish a tenant. And
it's funny because a lot of this stuff is like, we don't see it often because we do it properly.
Correct.
So they're like, I wouldn't even know what would happen in that scenario because that's dumb. We don't do that. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, basically it comes back down. Be fair, be nice. Things will usually work out. Now, you did touch on pets. They got a pet during it. And this is an ongoing debate with so many landlords. Do you think that pets really are that big of a threat? And either way, what's the best way to mitigate the possibility of them being a threat or a damage? I mean, I personally find that toddlers do a lot more damage than any dog that I've ever seen because they don't run around with, crayons on walls and stuff.
Yeah. We've had if you're a property manager, realtor, and you do a lot of showings for rentals, you will have had the conversation where people are like, I can't believe you charge a pet deposit. You're not allowed to charge a child deposit. Yeah. And these are from the tenants. Right? So it's funny. I'm sure we all get it. We encourage all of our clients to have pets, and some people are like, yeah, it's just good for your branding or whatever. It's like, well, no, if pets were awful, we wouldn't want you to have pets in your properties because it costs us way more headache and way more time. So there's multiple reasons to allow pets in the properties. We do a lot of condos and things, so you don't want too many living animals in there, but the strata bylaws generally take care of that.
Yeah, but usually maximum too.
Yeah, but we'll kind of like extrapolate those down to houses and townhouses and stuff anyways. So our suggestion is one pet up to 35 pounds. No vicious breeds or anything, but the vicious breeds don't fall into the 35-pound category. Like all vicious breeds are much bigger than 35 pounds.
That I don't buy the vicious breed thing.
Yeah,
perfectly.
But they're in the strata bylaws though.
Yeah, in a lot of cases.
Often, so can't have many anyways. But the fact of the matter is, when people are searching for properties, if you have the pets, if pet friendly is on or off. It's not a lot of them have dogs or cats or whatever.
Yeah.
And you get a huge difference in marketing.
Absolutely.
We've done a study on all of our applications. There's internal data. And it's like, if you do not pet friendly, you get access to it's like 62% of the market. And if you're doing pet friendly, one pet up to 35 pounds, it's like 91% of the market.
Yeah.
So it's basically 50% more people that you have access to.
Absolutely.
So you're just going to get a lot more people interested. So it's going to get higher quality tenant, possibly more rent, and you get a bigger deposit.
Yeah. And I find they stay longer because it's harder to find a place.
Yeah, that's behind that too.
So less vacancy is good.
Yeah. And one of the other things is that when you're screening financially, we see that people that make conservative financial decisions, they're able to afford to take care of pet problems.
Fair enough.
So we've had a couple tenants that have had behavioral issues with their new pets. We had one pet that we did an inspection, and we realized he chewed up the corners of a couple of the baseboards. It's just baseboards. Like, nobody needs to freak out here, but it was like, okay, it's damage. You caused damage.
Yep.
And so we submitted a maintenance request, got the estimates and everything, and went back to the tenant and said, hey, this is like, are you happy paying for this because your dog's on this? And they said, yeah, sorry, I was going to report it, but like the dog got over it now because it grew up and it doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah, because that's like puppies who do that.
Yeah, but it was like, fair enough, that's what's happened. And the tenant was living in a $2,000 a month apartment, and he's making $7,000 after tax. So he just said, yeah, sure. Just like send the work order. They agreed, right? They'll pay for it. And all we did was pull it out of their account. Yeah. And the owner got the money, and the vendor got the money, and it was all done. Yeah. And it was perfectly done. Right. Because $1,000 to somebody who makes $7,000 a month and has a housing cost of $2,000 a month can afford that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. But when you're trying to get the top market rent and you're not screening for rent income and you're throwing pets in there, that's where all the disasters come from.
Oh, absolutely. Right? That and not doing your checks.
Yeah.
Because like
the
nibbling on the basements, you're going to see that. But if you don't see that, then it's just going to keep on doing it, and now you've got more basements.
Correct. Yeah. Checking every two. And something else that people don't understand is that, so in that situation, that tenant was like, no, screw you guys, I'm not paying for it. Well, they still live there. They even have a lease in place.
Yeah.
Because they're only like 3 months or 4 months into the tenancy. And if you go to the RTB during the tenancy to say, hey, we want some money from this person, and the RTB issues you an order, and you serve that order on the tenant, and they don't pay within a reasonable period of time, give them 30 days or whatever. Yeah. And mention they'll do a payment plan, just be as generous as possible. And then if they're like, no, or they just don't do anything, you can hit them with a 30-day notice to end tenancy.
Yeah, which definitely get you yeah, you definitely get your attention at that point.
And there's a little bit more leverage in that situation. We've never had to do that, thankfully, because people are reasonable and we screen for income and stuff. But it's like that is an available thing, and if you're not doing your inspections, you don't get that opportunity to do that against somebody who is being unreasonable.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the tenants, when they're going to be moving out in that, what are some things that they can really pay attention to make sure that they get their deposit back? What are some main things that maybe get overlooked during a move out by a tenant? So what are some tips for tenants, basically, to give yourself the best shot to get all your deposit back?
Yeah. So things that we send out to the tenants when they've given us their notice, like, we're giving them an option of dates to schedule for the move-up inspections. Like, you want to make sure you're actually scheduling a day. Yeah, absolutely. Some people don't even think about that. Like, oh, the keys are on the counter. I know you have a set of keys. I'm out of here. And it's like, this is so dumb. So set a date where you can both go do it together. You want to make sure that they know, like, what the cleaning requirements and stuff are. So like, we send them
a checklist
cleaning
just to make sure.
To try to help them out. An individual landlord might not have that. You can probably go online and find one.
Oh, I'm sure.
Ask ChatGPT or something. You can also review, the guideline, or literally just call a cleaning company and see if they have a checklist, and they'll just send it to you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good.
That's where we got ours. One of the companies we use.
Yeah.
We also give them like contacts of other vendors that we use. So like handyman, moving, junk removal, just try to like help their move along, right? And if they're in a condo, you're reminding them, like, call the building and make sure you book the elevator.
That's a huge
one. That for you. They need to do that themselves. We're not the middleman for all this stuff. And we also send them a list. We also send them the move-in inspection. So it's like, this is what we saw in the move-in. So if anything's different from here, you should keep an eye on that.
That's a great piece of advice to send that ahead of time, because everyone's kept their moving report, right?
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it's funny. We use an app for our move-ins, so it's all into one PDF and it has all those photos. So yeah, we send that ahead of time in a lot of cases, and I think that it really does help out. It's like, oh, okay, now I know what it's going to look like when I'm doing it. So this makes it more comfortable to sort of see the lay of the land ahead of time.
Yeah,
right. One of the things
some people won't look at it. And that's fine.
Yeah, but it was sent.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think a lot of tenants tend to forget about, and it is in our checklist, is light bulbs. So many times.
There you go.
Replace the damn light bulb.
Yeah.
That's all I ask.
Thankfully, it's funny. The light bulbs are like some of the easiest ones to charge them back for. They're like, okay, 4 light bulbs, $25 or whatever we're looking at. And then literally just tell the next tenants, like, hey, these light bulbs don't really matter that much. There's 4 on the track and one's missing. Yeah. If you want to change it, send us the receipt. And people are pretty reasonable with that too.
Oh, absolutely. I also advise a lot of landlords just to stop any possible problems in the future, switch your lights to LED. They last for freaking ever. And then you never have to deal with a dead light
And
bulb
just like
again.
put backup bulbs, in the cabinet above the fridge, and then you're fine.
Yeah, because usually you replace like one light bulb, but they come in packs of 4.
Yeah, but it's also really easy to just like figure out what the light bulb is and send them to them on Amazon or whatever.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So I think we covered most of the stuff that we run into. Maybe not everything for moving the village, but we'll be here all day.
Can I tell a story quickly?
Absolutely, man.
Just very, very short. So we had this tenant that was, at the end of the day, on paper, a good tenant, right? So paid the rent, took care of the place, whatever. But they were just one of those, like, really unreasonable and just like weird communicators. So as property managers, the red flag goes up. It's like something else is going on. Like, are they Airbnb in the place, or are they running a drug den in there or something? And so I did our first condition inspection, and she was already paranoid about other things. Like, why are you in my house? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. And so she's following me around for the whole, just like, not the move in, move out, but like just the periodic inspection.
Yeah.
And so I go into the bathroom and I open, the cupboards under the sink, and I'm checking for leaks and stuff, just normal things. And I went and took the toilet tank off and like opened the lid and like flushed the toilet just to make sure it's like flushing properly.
Yep.
And she like started howling, laughing at me like I'm calling me paranoid and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, I don't think you understand what I have seen, and this is just we're just going through the checklist here. Why is it on the checklist? Like, why are we doing these things? There must be something. There must be some reason it's on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, just funny story. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, so if anyone's trying to get a hold of you to either hire you or learn more funny stories, how do they find you?
I'm pretty publicly available. Let's just Google Keaton Bessy. And I should come up on, Twitter, Instagram, our company's website will come up.
You dancing on TikTok?
Don't do any dancing on TikTok or yelling about housing. If you're a potential client who's looking for our services, you can text the word homeowner, just all one word, to 604-256-6930. And that'll automate a text back, give you all the information you need, or let's just go to our website.
Cool. Yeah, we'll have all that in the description as well below, just because some people might not know how to spell Bessy.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for coming on the show. And if you've been listening for this long, thank you very much for tuning in to Bamboo, Vancouver's property management and investment podcast.